expand that to look at milblogging, which is current and former military reporting what they see, do.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in positive thinking and positive attributes of things. Actually, I'm not. It's not that it's a belief. It's a scientific fact that your brain is it actually works as a quantum computer. We realize this now. Neurons isn't what your brain uses to think and do calculations. It's these little quantum tubules that are a subset of the neurons. The neurons are actually the controllers of all that. And so anytime you have a thought or an action or anything, there's a set of quantum states set up in your brain. And those quantum states are interfered with other quantum states in the universe. And the quantum states that decohere are the ones that don't exist or vanish, and the ones that cohere, as it's called, or don't vanish, is why the reality around you is perceived the way you perceive it, or is created the way you create it, because it's actually a quantum phenomena, quantum mechanical phenomena. And so if you're always sitting there having doom and gloom thoughts, what you are broadcasting to the world is the quantum states. Your mind is always set in the quantum states that describe this doom and gloom. And so quantum states, what they like to do is they like to interfere with the rest of the quantum states of the universe, and the quantum states around them that are the same are the ones that stay and the others vanish. That's called cohering or decohering. And so the bad quantum states of the bad thoughts are the ones that you seem to be causing to happen to yourself if you're continually having the doom and gloom thoughts. All we see on the news is nothing but the doom and gloom. I mean, we're telling everybody how horrible things are. And I don't know why, I guess people like to watch a train wreck. You know, people like to see the car wrecks and see how horrible things were to people because they don't believe it can happen to them. But they never show you the heroic efforts that some of the folks did that was amazing, and the good outcome that it had from it. You know, you hardly ever hear about the fireman that ran into the building and saved a little kid. You hear about the fireman that ran into a building and caused the deaths of somebody because he did something wrong. You know, you hear about Hollywood and the news media wants to ostracize all the military because of a couple of bad Joes doing something they shouldn't have done at the prison camp, or they shot somebody by accident they shouldn't have, or something, as opposed to how many heroic things they did and how much good they did, and how many of the Iraqi folks, for example, in the Middle East, in Iraq right now, have such a different quality of life. I mean, they're still in the fear of there being some kind of terrorist bombing attack event or something, but they're not living under the threat of being put in a wood chipper by their president if they have a different opinion. When do you hear that? When do you hear that? You know, and so you hear it in the blogosphere, in the milblogs, for certain. You'll see some of the negative part of it, but I like to see the positive aspect of it. And while my brother was deployed, I kept up with that. I looked in the blogs a lot to see what was going on, and I would email him some, and I would talk to some other friends of ours. There's a good friend of Bain, Patrick Vanner. I don't know if a lot of people may or may not have heard of Patrick yet. Hopefully he'll be a Bain author before long. He's got some books submitted to Bain, but he's at any rate a very active Bain barfly. And he has gone to the Middle East a time or two in support of the war and doing whatever his job is requiring him to do. And he always sends back the positive aspects of what's happening over there. And I've got some other friends, working for the Army, of course. I talk to a lot of people who have the anecdotal stories that are the good stories that you never hear because of somebody they knew or the job they were doing or whatever. And that's the things that you get from the mill blogs that you don't get from the news. So I think it's awesome.
So, what do you think of efforts to both unofficial and official to do away with the mill blogs?
Oh my. I didn't realize that there was anything but nasty rumors saying that there were official efforts to do away with the milblogs, other than maybe a fear that there might be some leaks of security information. You know, but I'm all for, you know, protecting security information. By the way, I think way more things ought to be classified than they are. But that's another story. I can talk about that all day. In fact, in my one textbook that I wrote there on defending the planet against extraterrestrial invasion, there's a whole chapter on why it all needs to be completely, extremely above top secret. But that's a whole other story again. I can't perceive that not being a violation of the First Amendment rights. You know, blogging, the Supreme Court ruled when the internet first got real big in '94-ish time frame that it was an open conversation and can't be censored, which I think the porn industry probably was what sparked keeping that alive, right? But so if it's an open conversation, then legally we can't do a thing about it, or we shouldn't. I don't say we can't, we shouldn't. And I agree with that, because I like to hear what people have to say, even if I don't agree with it. It's people who don't like to hear what other people have to say, even if they don't agree with it, that you have to be wary of, because then they're going to try and remove your rights to say what you want to say.
Blogging in some ways has come out of technology communications changes. How do you see future communication technology changes not only affecting perhaps blogging, but military operations and military science fiction?
You need to read my books. That's how I tell you how it's going to work. Read One Day on Mars, start there, and read Tau Ceti Agenda that follows, and the One Good Soldier that I've got to finish because it's contracted to write. But at any rate, that's my day job, is to figure out what the next generation and next generation technologies are that will change the warfighter and the warfighter's ability to do his job. And from a communication standpoint, you know, the internet is an amazing thing. A lot of people don't realize where the internet came from. You know, it came from Licklider, just a brilliant idea back in the late 50s, early 60s, to create a way to communicate in the event of a global thermonuclear war. At the time, had we had just a couple of precise strikes, or they had to be that precise with big, 100 kilotons, 100 megaton weapons or whatever, they would knock out all of our telephone communications. And you could even disrupt the satellite communications if you did it right. So Licklider's idea was to create a network like a spider web, like a airport hub aspect to move information around, to have multiple ways to get the data from one place to the other, as opposed to one pipeline from here to there. And that enabled the internet as it grew and grew and grew. Now you've got millions of ways to get the data from here to there. So you'd have to basically destroy the entire planet to keep you from being able to contact folks over the internet. And that's amazing. Now we've got some data bandwidth issues because there's so many people on it sending so much big pieces of data. But the next generation will help. Next generation internet will help accomplish fixing that, and the technologies and changing internet packets. So the next step in communication, like the blogospheres, for example, right now you're doing this and sending it out. What would happen if instead of the hub being connected to your computer to go out, maybe it'd still be connected to your computer if you want it to be, but you had a little transmitter that you wore on your head, that you could literally sit there and all of you think together in the same room, like across the world. You're sitting there in each other's mind, talking with each other, just thinking to them. Now that would be intriguing. Now, and think about, from right now, the interface between the computer and your brain is the screen or the printout or an audio message, whatever. So what if we put a USB port back here under your ear somewhere, and you can plug in and download the information directly into your brain in such a way that you would feel that you had experienced it. So you could download the memory of having read a book and have that data in there. Think how that would help the warfighter. Think of the operational scenarios, the information You know, the movie The Matrix really comes to mind in some of that, although they were in a fake world. But if they saw a vehicle or something, say, hey, you know, send me the information on how to hotwire a motorcycle. Well, think about that from a real world aspect. Your pilot gets shot down in his Black Hawk somewhere, and it's some little thing that needs fixed, and maybe it could have them wire in how to fix it. Or you got a wounded guy but no medic. You have them download the information to fix that particular wound or injury. Think of how that would change, not just how people would blog. I mean, just think, when you come up with one innovation, there are going to be billions of applications, and it's going to change so many things. Like, you know, how did the internet change everything? Originally, the internet was a communications thing. We do our banking on it. You do business advertising on it. We communicate with relatives, friends, and loved ones. We buy everything on it, down to groceries. You know, so that's a tool. And so think about the next thing. If you have a way to communicate with everybody just directly, I call it direct to mind, and that's, I think, might be the next big man-machine interface breakthrough, would be when we can go direct from the calculations in the machine or whatever the machines do, the data stored there, and display directly to your mind. And think about, then you don't have to figure out how to print out 3D graphics in a way that makes sense. You could actually store the visual imagery into your brain of a terrain, of a battleground or a battlescape or something. You could do battle planning, battle management at multiple layers, just in your brain. And you'd think you were seeing it, or you would have the experience as though you had seen it, or the visualization of it. So, God, what's that going to do to blogging? I mean, think how different the blogosphere would be if you plug in. It could be wireless. It could be a cell phone thing. You know, you could just be walking along the street, driving down the road, blogging just by thinking to all the other bloggers. Of course, then what would the flame wars be like in a situation like that? Hey, get out of my head, dude.